Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Unity Hour. We have a really excited one this week, so let me get started. Let me jump right in. If you're new to the Mom Project, Unity Hour is our virtual event series where we wind down each Friday with a specific topic and expert. I just want to let you guys know this will be recorded, so don't worry. Today, we're thrilled to host Katie Adkins, who's a leadership coach, and I will get into her bio in a little bit. My name is Hiba. I'm the social media manager at the Mom Project. I'm taking over Unity Hour as my teammate Katie is on maternity leave. I also have Tiffany here, who is here to co host just in case anything goes wrong. But she's best known at the Mom Project for building out Unity and Rally, and we'll put info in the chat if you need anything on those programs. So let me get into Katie. Katie is the founding coach of AdkinsTalent Solutions. She works with highly motivated professionals to help them find clarity, create meaningful change at work and in life. Katie and her clients are lifelong learners who desire to make a difference through listening, learning, and leading. Today, we'll be getting into how to create meaningful conversations while we're social distancing, how to use those everyday conversations to make a difference, and how to identify key challenges and create ways to move forward. As the session unfolds, and if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to it as time allows. Katie, I'm throwing it to you.
All right. Thanks, Eva. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm going to go ahead and show my screen and give me a thumbs up, Eva, if you can see my screen. All right, cool. So I'm so thankful just for this time and for Unity Hour and the great team that put this together. So happy Friday. I'm excited to talk about creating connections through caring conversations with you today. And I'll talk about who I am in a minute. But first, I want to thank you guys. And I just know that everyone behind the screen, maybe a talented woman, hopefully we have some men joining us too, but you are all talented women, just caring moms, driven leaders, committed friends, and overall just wonderful humans, I'm sure. I can't see you, so we won't be able to one-on-one connect today, but this Unity Hour is essentially a conversation about human connection. And one of my favorite quotes on human connection is from a TED Talk by Shirley Turkle, who is a professor of social studies of science and technology. And in her TED Talk, Shirley Turkle says, human relationships are rich and they're messy and they're demanding. And I realize that most all of us behind these screens today are balancing rich, messy, and demanding human relationships of not only your families, but your coworkers, your neighbors and communities on top of major global issues right now. I also realize that each of us is unique and wonderful in our own ways, and my perspective and stories are just as unique. So I do believe that we can learn from each other no matter how similar or different we might be. And that's what makes our relationships so rich and messy and demanding, right? So the interesting thing I want to bring up here today is around our relationships and connections, there's something between us, literally a thing between us right now. Whether it be your computer screen or your cell phone or your tablet, technology is right smack dab between us.
Katie, some
Yes,
people are having a little trouble hearing you. Can you move a little closer to the mic?
sure. And I will speak more, I will speak loudly too. Can you hear me better now? Hopefully. There we go.
Uh,
All right. Cool. So I will speak up for you. So thank you. And with technology, even though it's right in the middle, I'm super thankful that it's allowing us to be here today, even in the midst of social distancing and being in different locations. It also makes us think that we can be in multiple spaces and places at once. And I realize that some of you may be doing things, taking care of children, getting work done, watching something else online. So I do appreciate you being here and listening, but we just have to acknowledge that technology is going to impact our time today, as well as our everyday work and life conversations. That leads me to finish the quote about human relationships. So again, Shirley Turkle starts with human relationships are rich and they're demanding and they're messy. And we try to clean them up with technology. And when we do, one of the things that can happen is we sacrifice conversation for mere connection. We shortchange ourselves, and over time, we seem to forget this, or we seem to stop caring. But I believe that you today watching this Unity Hour, you're here because you care, and I want you to know that I care deeply. I care about helping us all create more meaningful connections and conversations, even in the midst of extreme global and personal challenges. Every one of us can help create opportunity, open up exciting possibilities, and find hope in continuing to move forward in life and work. So during our time today, I do want to ground us by acknowledging a few things. Number one, most of you probably don't know me. Heba can tell you I'm a leadership coach, which I actually like to refer to as a processing partner. And I partner with highly motivated professionals to help them find clarity and create meaningful change in work and in life. And as a coach, I help my clients find insight to move forward, not by telling them what to do. Because I found that listening deeply and asking powerful questions is the best. I found that my clients have the most helpful answers to their situations, and thinking that I have the answer or need to find the answer only blocks me from using one of my most powerful tools of caring curiosity. I love when people gain insight and achieve more clarity than they ever expected, because the unexpected is often just what we needed to create meaningful change. So today, I don't have all the answers, and I believe my curiosity is even more powerful. Of course, I won't be able to have a true one-on-one conversation with you guys today via this webinar, so I'll share some stories and experiences and ask a few general questions, and I do hope you walk away inspired. And I want you to ask questions in the chat. I'm sure you guys are already engaging like you do on these Unity hours and connecting with each other via the chat. And that's great. Be you there and chat in and comment all your heart desires. Just know that you know you best. And in order to find the best answers, we may need to ask a few more questions. Okay, so you might want to know a little bit about this person behind your screen right now, me. Well, you can, thanks to the internet and technology, do a quick Google search and access some words and content about me on my website, LinkedIn, and even photos of my personal life from my days of being an Instagram addict. All those can be useful. However, reading a few things or seeing images doesn't automatically create a supportive connection or meaningful conversation between us. So before I really dive in, I want to go ahead and give you my phone number if you'd like to start a one-on-one conversation. So that's 770-241-3333. And of course, that's all over online as well, and it'll be at the end of this presentation. But over the next hour, let's acknowledge what we can do. So first, you'll be able to hear our voices, that's Heba and mine, and see our faces. So by hearing our voices, also our words, and seeing our facial expression, it gives you access to most of our communication. Now what you can do is you have the power of questions in the chat, and that's very powerful. And we really, Heba and I talked a lot about this, of we want you to engage to better guide our time, because this hour is for you guys. And just know that we only have access to your written words, which is actually less than 10% of your communication, which I'll talk more about in a minute. So just know that the quick hits of connection via the chat in the webinar, or text message, email, social media, they may help us gather bits of information and give us brief moments of encouragement. And I do hope you engage today and gather helpful information. My primary goal, though, for our time together today is that it acts as a catalyst to create more caring conversations in our lives and at work. So that is important to mention a formula about communication. And you may have heard this before, but the 55-38-7 communication formula is based off research that says 55% of our communication is body language, 38 is tone of voice, and 7% is the actual words that we use. Now, it's dangerous just to go to this formula and claim it's absolute because we don't always have access to the content or the consistency of others' communication. So the content of our communication would be our environments, the history we have, the background of the relationships of those we communicate with, and many other factors of who we are and where we sit or stand as we communicate. And in order to understand our consistency, you definitely need to engage in multiple two-way conversations over a much longer time period than a brief 1-hour webinar. So as you watch and listen today, remember that a single gesture or comment doesn't necessarily mean one thing. Being human is what makes conversation different than just communication. And as a scholar, Theodore Zeldin said, conversation is a meeting of minds with different memories and habits. When minds meet, they don't just exchange facts, they transform them, reshape them, draw different implications from them, engage in new trains of thought. And conversation doesn't just reshuffle the cards, it can create new cards. So conversation is really important for our human connection, right? Which is why we need to think about it. We can all take gradual steps to create conversations and cultivate more meaningful connections. Conversations not only help us learn each other, they help us learn ourselves. And by avoiding real-time conversations with each other, it can actually decrease our bandwidth for self-reflection. And as you guys are primarily moms and caregivers, you've probably noticed that the ability to have a conversation is essential, not only for us as adults, but for kids growing up. And which leads me to a conversation I had earlier this week with my friend Renette. Renette texted me some precious pictures of her 3 boys as I was working on these slides. My first reaction was to text her and like the images, but then I paused and remembered I actually owed her a phone call. And I thought, why wouldn't I slow down and take the time to call her right now? So I picked up the phone and connected with her. Our conversation was encouraging, and here's what I learned, along with a few pictures that she sent to make you smile, and she gave me approval to share. We talked about the fact that everyone's life and work circumstances are different, especially in the midst of having a lot of work from home and transition, and then the fact that transition is always happening in our lives, whether that be a transition at work, maybe with your spouse, maybe yours, transition in life with Renette, and she just had Justice, her new baby, or transitioning to a new house, maybe a neighbor, maybe a death, so many things in between that. But regardless of those circumstances, we all need connection and support. And Renette is a wonderful wife and mama, daughter, friend, leader, and so much more. She's a part of my support system, and I'm so thankful. Too often, we get so busy with our families and work, and Renette and I talked about this, that we overlook our friendships, myself included. I'm definitely not perfect at that. And we need to support our support system. So a few questions that I've been reflecting on, and I hope will help you too, that Renette and I talked about. 2 of them are on the screen, but a few more are, what does your ideal support system look like? How are you communicating that, not only to your family, but to your boss, to your coworkers, to your neighbors? What connections do you already have? Maybe they're from years ago and you need to rekindle them. Or what might help support your connections? What might help you support other people? So asking questions like these to explore and acknowledge not only our thoughts, but our feelings is actually really important for our brain's cognitive load. So I won't go too far into this, but thought suppression is literally not possible. And if you want more research, you can look up the white bear experiment. But the point is actually reflecting on our thoughts and emotions and having conversations and connecting with people to help us process is super important. And I'm so grateful for friends like Renette who help me process and move forward. We have conversations both in life and at work. And I believe we need to remember three simple things today that are actually a lot harder than just saying them on a screen to build more supportive connections and conversations. And those three things are: we need to slow down, we need to create space, and we need to simply cultivate more real time and caring conversations. And I found that, at least for me, this has helped create, build, and deepen my supportive connections. So now I'm going to slow down and share a little bit of my story, and hopefully it resonates and helps you. And I'm happy to have conversations about it moving forward. But where I sit today is that in a few weeks, I'll celebrate my 1 year anniversary as a business owner. And before I went out on my own and took off my whole golden handcuffs of my nice, steady corporate salary and incredible benefits and wonderful colleagues, I got advice from a lot of people about my business and what that looked like. And one of the first pieces of advice I got was, your mess is your message. So I'm going to start by sharing some of my mess with you. I'm an imperfect person with a deep desire to continuously improve. My work as a professional coach has helped me so much to learn and grow in order to better serve my family, friends, clients, and community. As we've said before, I'm a lifelong learner who desires to make a difference through listening, learning, and leading. And that's far from who I was as this little girl with a mess on her face and her hands, who was afraid to speak up in public but raised my voice at home. I was afraid of silence because silence was when my mental and emotional clutter could build up. My mind seemed to rarely slow down. I slept with a notepad beside my bed so I could write down all my to-do items as they piled up. And looking back, I didn't realize that many of my physical symptoms, such as stomach aches and more, were a product of my mental and emotional stress that I held inside. Little did I know that my unconscious fears and internal pressure did, and sometimes still do, tend to make my mind feel like it's racing and creates a vicious cycle of anxiety that keeps me feeling stuck and unable to move forward. Now, the good news is I've become to overcome those fears by people that had those caring conversations with me, which is why I'm so passionate about these caring conversations, helping us understand our thoughts and emotions and how to use them to move forward instead of staying stuck in that spiral in your head. So now I'd like to ask you guys a question and hopefully learn from you. So, what is a caring conversation to you? I'd love to hear some perspectives, and I will pause.
While we wait for the chat to kind of chime in, I would like to throw in there, for me, a caring conversation is just when two people are actually like actively listening to each other. I think that's really hard nowadays because we don't really listen. We listen to like for our response, we don't actually listen to actually hear what the person's talking about. So for me, a caring conversation would be to like actually listen. Um,
That's good. Thank you, Eva. Yeah. And I think that it's hard now, of course, actually listening to the chat. So, again, would love thoughts on that, of why I'm passionate and why you may think, and we all have different perspectives. But that's a little bit about the communication part of it. But I also want to highlight the impact of technology on our conversations. So you should also probably know a little bit more of my mess. For years, my need for speed and the ability to leverage technology for quick wins transformed how I felt about connection. Not only connection to other people, but also to myself. I was addicted to these speed rush emotional highs of brief connection. And this Instagram photo you see on the screen, it was taken about 8 years ago when I was a digital innovation strategist at an advertising agency. And as a digital innovation strategist, it was my job to learn about new technologies. So that's why I was on Instagram almost from the moment it launched in October 2010. And this photo was taken only 2 years after, in the middle of my 3 year addiction, where I shared over 3,000 Instagram posts. I didn't realize it at the time, but my digital connections changed how I felt about my identity. I enjoyed the creativity without realizing my Instagram presence was transforming my from a creative outlet to a place where I really found my identity. I was feeling more and more lonely in the midst of posting my memories and achievements to Instagram. And in my rush to constantly connect, I strangely felt alone, which is why I want to tell you my life changed in 2013 when my neighbor and dear friend Esther shared this Shirley Turkle, who I've mentioned before, the quote at the beginning, TED Talk with me. I realized that I was rushing around, using all my mental and emotional energy on these quick digital highs. And to quote Shirley Turkle again, she says, that feeling no one's listening to me is very important in our relationships with technology. That's why it's so appealing to have a Facebook page or a Twitter feed or so many, because there are so many automatic listeners, right? And the feeling that no one's listening to me makes us want to spend more time with machines than to care, that seem to care about us. Well, I believe that humans care about us more than technology. And we simply need to slow down and remember that, and then create caring conversations to build those human connections. So, slowing down and being present, thinking not only about ourselves, but about others, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. And feeling we're listened to is essential for those supportive connections. And feeling truly heard requires us to be intentional, and that's really slowing it down and breathing. And then, as I said, only less than 10% really of our communication is our actual words. Therefore, in order to have more meaningful conversations, we need to engage with each other in more than quick hits of the written word. We need more supportive connections and real-time conversations in order to hear words and tone of voice, even if we can't see each other's body language. Now, I know this could be crazy challenging, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, like I have to keep these little ones alive and have a job, and there are only so many hours in a day. And I get it. Like, it's so hard. And I don't fully understand hopefully, when I am a mom, I will be there. But now I realize that for myself, slowing down is essential for my self-care, and then that bleeds into caring for others. And communicating via text or email or posting, it feels safe because we can edit and it's quick and we don't interrupt someone. But in order to build true safe spaces, they're built through vulnerability and the other person seeing you and hearing you for the unique and beautiful person you are. This photo of my friend Brandy and I is from a real-time conversation where we're laughing at each other because I said something ridiculous or we were like being goofy. I can't even remember, but I know that we were laughing because we were laughing at something she or I said. And it's interesting because Shirley Turkle in that TED Talk says, when I ask people what's wrong with having a conversation, people say, and I could say this sometimes, I'll tell you what's wrong with having a conversation. It takes place in real time and you can't control what you're going to say. So the bottom line is texting, email, posting, all of these things let us present the self as we want to be. We get to edit, and that means we get to delete, and that means we get to retouch. The face, the voice, the flesh, the body, not too little, not too much, just right. As much as we like that, just right, it's not real life, right? And that's what's wonderful and rich and messy. Of course, texting and email can give us that false safe space, but we really need to create these spaces with our families or coworkers, and it takes time. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it's vulnerability too. Of I actually really appreciate when someone will get on video without being all done up for me, and I've learned that as a coach, in our brain base, our brain is constantly scanning for threat. So we need to help it know things and feel safe in order to best function. Now, we won't know everything, but we can, you know, communicate more. And then we can leverage technology. That's a beautiful thing. Even at a distance, we can do this. We can do it as long as we're intentional. So, a story that has actually happened in the past 2 months is I've built a friendship with someone who lives across the country. So I'm in Georgia, she's in California. And our first conversation actually set the stage for a vulnerability when the unexpected happened. I remember it very clearly. And I saw the calendar invite. It said Abigail and I had a call on May 19th, 2020. And it was a day where I'd been working around the house and gone on a walk and hadn't done my hair and makeup is the point. And the background is here. It was my friend Keith introduced us via email. And so when I jumped on the call with Abigail, the unexpected happened when she said, "Hey, can we get on video?" I told her, I was honest, I told her I looked like a mess. And I had no makeup on. And she said that she preferred me that way. And she really has accepted me in all my mess. And we've both used intentional questions and listening to deepen our relationship with one another and connect via video when possible. And this is all being said that it's important that we're intentional about not allowing social distancing to lead to social isolation. And again, it's hard. Totally understand that. But connecting daily with your support system, at least by voice, and positively engaging with others just once a day is super helpful. I was recently listening to a podcast called Total Brain, and Dr. Evian Gordon was interviewing Shelley Carson about just social connectivity in the COVID era. And she highlights the fact that giving support is as important to our health as receiving it. And that social connection actually lowers inflammation in the brain, which decreases stress, specifically for anxiety and depression. So whether that be checking in on a neighbor, dropping off a note, or even I've started using the send a voice text instead of just a text option so friends can hear my voice. It could be a simple phone call with someone you haven't reconnected with in years. We can get creative, and all that's to say that I love this quote by Daniel Goleman, because in today's era we have access to a lot of information. The internet opens up all of that, but new value arises when we put together ideas in novel ways and start asking smart questions that open up untapped potential. And a lot of times, the reason why answers and advice don't always care for someone well is we may not have the full context of their situation. We may be introducing our own biases or not engaging them to discover our own answers. And so a big question that I ask myself and has been very helpful for me over the years that I need to remember more is actually, I need to wait. And WAIT stands for why am I talking? Because taking time to ask yourself and others meaningful questions, and like Heba said, listening, not to have the response, but to hear the words, just soak them in and ask more. And a good question that's real easy is the all question. which stands for, and what else? um, and like Eva said, Stephen Covey actually is the one that said most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. We need to engage and not be so, am I asking the right questions, or am I just, yeah, be yourself, but also know that next time you feel pressure to have the right answer for your kids or your partner or your boss, feel the freedom to ask more questions instead of rushing to the answer. Slow down and care for yourself and others by seeking to better understand yourself and others. Another thing about that is, and this is super hard to do, but being okay with being alone sometimes to reflect, and again, getting creative as moms to find that space. But my main point is that we have some small steps we can take, and you guys probably have very creative ideas to make room for this. But just things that slow down, and a lot of times for me, that's slowing down my words. Creating space, and not only safe space, but safe space for our families, our coworkers, and our community. And having those real time conversations when we're walking to our mailbox and see a neighbor, or when we feel like we're going to just text someone back and we give them a call. Make rooms and find ways to demonstrate that. Create sacred spaces in your home, and just reclaim those conversations. Don't let the technology do that and take it from you. So the most important thing is that we listen to each other, and I wish I could listen to you today, because thanks for listening to me, even the boring bits, and I look forward to having more conversations with you. So with that, I will pause and just thank you again for listening and see if we have any questions. Otherwise, I have plenty else to talk about, but I'll be quiet now.
Thank you so much, Katie. So we had a lot of things pop up in the chat when you asked what was a caring conversation to you. A lot of people in the chat were just saying empathy, letting go of your own agenda, active listening, listening and asking questions to understand better, having a one on one conversation, bringing up difficult topics and working through them. So the chat was buzzing about that. We do have some questions that I do want to get to you. So, how do you think caring conversations can translate into interviewing for a job? How about networking?
Great question. So, as we interviewing for a job and networking is a lot of times we don't know the person, right? And let's say networking, which can mean a lot of different things, and having conversations with people. It's my husband. I actually will use this. He does not ask people as soon as he meets them, "What do you do?" It's, "What are you interested in?" or "What are you passionate about?" And that opens up a lot more connectivity than "What do you do?" Job interviewing, it's finding out what those people. I would ask just what are their hobbies too, or I think job interviewing is a lot of listening as well. It is helpful to have your questions written out. Um, but when I was interviewing, I remember at a startup, probably about 10 years ago in Atlanta, I will never forget the moment one of the founders looked at me and said, "I'm supposed to ask you that question," because I had listened, and they talked about their values of being supportive, self starting, and positive. And so I came back, and later on in the conversation, I said, "How are you supportive, self starting, and positive?" And he appreciated that. So it's kind of, again, in conversation, making sure that you listen. And that's really hard to do when we're nervous. We want to talk, or at least I want to talk a lot and fill a space. So hope that's helpful.
That is really helpful. Also, somebody wants to know, can you have a caring conversation even if it's one-sided?
And I wish I could ask that person, what does one-sided look like?
I guess for me, it would be like, having a conversation with somebody and they're not really giving me like what I'm looking for, if that makes sense. When you start a conversation, you're kind of going in anticipating like the flow, but how do you have that flow if the person isn't really like, how do you distinguish between a caring conversation and then a conversation that's, just not really, it's just a one-sided conversation.
So I heard you say that they're not giving you what you're looking for, and this is where it's. I'm happy to have continued conversations about that because I think if it's a business conversation, and you're going into it and you're like, hey, I just need this presentation or I need this fact that you have, right? That's one thing. But what is our intent and our heart behind? Um, are we seeking to understand them? Or are we seeking to be understood? And I have to ask myself that all the time.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask Katie, is there any way that you could take the AirPods out so the Zoom sees you as the speaker? Because I think my face has been on YouTube this whole time, and I know you guys probably don't want to see me when Katie is talking.
Oh yeah.
um,
Well, let me try here. Let's see. It really likes the ear pods. Come on. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay, can you hear me now?
we can hear you.
Okay.
Let me know if you guys can see Katie and not me. um, okay, I think this is good now. So, okay. So, how do you make space for meaningful conversations in your life? What advice do you have for that?
Yeah. So for me, it's actually slowing down and just seeing the human, especially behind emails. And I like to actually ask, like, how are you? Or I'll look people up and ask a interesting fact about something they posted or whatnot. But making space is really just every moment, right? It's when I'm really focused on putting together this conversation and my husband and I happen to cross paths, it's listening, but then he also said, I know you're busy, and it's moving and just communicating like when we can stop and take that time, and when, we do have something in a loving way. And people that love us are going to respect that. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Yes, I think that did. Another one is how can you provide more body language cues in video calls?
Oh, actually, one of my colleagues from one of my executive coaching programs, she has a video on this. But it's interesting because, and I'm not doing a great job today. We just moved, and I'm trying to figure out my setup. But they, Allison says that if you show your more of your body actually, and not just your head, right? That's helpful. I think it's imperfect, and we have to know that, and ask more questions. Even I found that some of my clients, we just do phone calls, and I just ask, like, what's happening with your body right now? Are you slumped over? Are you perked up? Simply asking that, sometimes it can be awkward if you're not in like a kind of coaching relationship like that, but you can ask.
Good tips, guys. I hope you guys are writing that down. Just ask, see what people want, and then just kind of go with the flow. Another question that we have is how just caring and support system, like you mentioned that, like how do you create that like caring support system in your life? I know you said make sure you reach out, make sure you, if it is a text message, call. Like, are there any other tips you have for like cultivating that support system?
Yeah, it's super hard. And everyone has different circumstances. So I can only speak from the place that I'm at. And like I said, my husband and I just moved in the midst of all this. And so it's simply when I see someone walking down the street, I knew, like super awkward, being that person. Or we may have relationships from the past that I've reached out to people from high school that I haven't talked to in years and just had conversations, and they have to be organic, right? Like, we're not going to force that. But I found that, the more you have and you open yourself up and then you check in on people, like, we have to support our support system instead of, oh, why is no one like calling me? I fall into that all the time, but I need to, like, even my parents or whatnot call people more. So that's my little tidbit.
Okay, how do you actively listen and think of powerful questions at the same time? Because doing both is really hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in listening and a lot of coaching training and stuff, there's actually 3 levels of listening. So the first level is kind of our normal day-to-day conversation. We are listening with our perspective and our bias, and we're human. We're never going to get rid of that, even trained coaches. And then the second is listening to their words. And a lot of times, like, I take notes to see like what words are being repeated. When you're writing down someone's words, it's hard to think about your thoughts. So that can help sometimes. And I still am not very good at this with my family. And so then your brain is going to think of things, but try to focus on the words. And I focus on them. And then a lot of times it's a really simple question. You don't, if you're overthinking your question, you're probably asking it for yourself. So if someone ends on, I was really stressed, sometimes it could be, what does stress look like? The shorter the question, a lot of times the more powerful.
And speaking more about like powerfulness, um, can you talk more about why body language is more powerful than words? I
Mm.
think people forget that sometimes, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So just kind of elaborating more on that.
Yeah, I wish I could pull out my binder right now on my brain based coaching module, because they talked about that our unconscious, really our body and our brain can tell that to our body before our mouth even does. So I've been engaging with people that the other day I was in a session and the, she kept doing this. And I just called out, do you notice that you're doing this? And didn't even notice, right? Like, a lot of times we can't see ourselves. Right now, I can see myself. I need to hide myself view, which is also helpful when you're doing Zoom, so you're not focused on what you're doing. But yeah, it's just calling out, hey, I noticed, and don't make an assumption. Like, did you touch your face because you're stressed? Um, just say, I noticed this. I simply noticed this. And the person would probably be like, oh, I didn't even notice that. And it helps them say what that means to them.
One other thing that came through our chat was, can you repeat the 55-38-7 metric and what the numbers represented?
Yeah, let me put that back up on the. Is my screen still showing? I'm happy. It's 55 percent our body language. It's 38% your tone of voice. So I can say something like this, or I can say it like this. So that's the 38, and then the 7 is the actual words we use. But I'm happy to share slides, and that's, you can Google that too and find that information.
Another question that came up is, what is the first or most important action to kick off or be a part of a caring conversation? For example, if you only start working on like one thing, what would it be?
If you only start working on one thing, what would it be? I think that self reflection and solitude. Um, like I said, becoming a coach myself has helped me better understand myself, and having people coach me, or just friends take that time and pausing I was really afraid of the pause for a long time in life. And I can tell you more about why if you want to have a conversation, but just be okay with the silence. That's where I'd start.
What other advice do you have for someone that's just looking to create more meaningful conversations, whether that's personally or professionally? Especially when it comes to professionally, I think a lot of people forget that when it comes to like the job search, the most important thing is like how you handle yourself within having those conversations. So, what advice would you give for somebody that's probably looking for jobs and they haven't been landing the ones that they want, and they probably do want to start that self-reflection? Where should they begin?
Yeah. Yeah, the job search, especially right now, is super tough, right? Like you can't go to in-person stuff. Um, you can definitely get jobs by putting in those resumes online. And but I would say have conversations, like be willing to use your current community to just talk with people and learn. Don't go into a conversation like I remember having a, well, what am I going to get out of this conversation? Just learn from people. It may end up in a job, it may not, but like every conversation you can learn from. So I think I don't want to say don't put pressure because there are circumstances we need jobs to feed our families, but um, a lot of times we put so much pressures on ourselves to do it right that, or hide behind a screen that, we don't open up the possibilities by being vulnerable and having those real time conversations.
Yes. So if there's anything you guys want to take from this, be vulnerable, have those real conversations, dig deep within yourself to kind of figure that out. And I wanted to ask you one last thing, Katie, before we go. If you could just leave everybody watching today with some parting wisdom, what would that be?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think slow down, like don't fear actually experiencing your emotions and thoughts. I do a lot. Um, and you have to acknowledge them in order to work through them. And I'm still figuring out how to do that, whether it's pulling some weeds in the garden or um, just taking time to talk to someone. It really helps me to have people reach out and have a conversation. But that's me. I also prefer extroversion. So yeah, but I hope you guys enjoyed today. Feel free to call me. My number's on the screen. You can send me an email or something too to schedule. That's fine. I'm not against technology, but I would love to hear your voices and hopefully see your faces someday. So thank you for your time, Hiba and Tiffany, and the whole Mom Project. I was telling them they work real hard and did such a good job on this. So thank you. Oh, you're still muted.
Thank you, Katie, and everyone. This session is recorded just in case you need to look back and just, whenever you're looking to create that meaningful conversation, whether it's professionally or personally at home, take a look back. I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties of hearing Katie and then seeing me. So hopefully we didn't get super lost in translation there, but we will see you guys next week for our next Unity Hour, ending a little early today, but the conversation was still really meaningful. So the chat's all thanking you, Katie. So thank you again just for coming and speaking with us. And we'll see you guys next week.
You have 10
Bye,
minutes
everyone.
Zoom call now.